On this episode, we speak to the beauty of life's unpredictability and the idea that faith can guide us to destinations we never envisioned. Benedictine College graduates Jake and Emily Schmitz talk about their journey of what could have been Father Jake and Sister Emily. Their shared love story is a powerful testament to putting all you are and all you are supposed to be in the hands of God.
I was like, if you're really a God of details, like I will know if it's the right man that you bring to my life, if he's from a large family, and if he's been in the seminary before. Like, that's my two criteria. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care, I mean, obviously I want to be attracted to him, but like,
right.
You take care of the details, but like, that's how I'll know it's the right person to at least like get to know.
Welcome to Always a Raven, a Benedictine College podcast that goes far beyond the brick streets of Atchison, Kansas. Hosted by Janelle Menz, Always a Raven offers a unique glimpse into Ravens from all generations. From where are they now to remember when, these conversations share career triumphs and personal milestones. So whether you are an alum looking to reconnect, a prospective student, or simply curious about what makes Benedictine College so special, join us and discover the enduring power of Benedictine College.
On today's episode of Always a Raven podcast, I have Jacob and Emily Schmitz. Jacob graduated from Benedictine College in 2013, and Emily graduated just a year before in 2012. Thank you so much for being here with me today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Jacob and Emily live in Kansas City, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, and you have 4 kiddos. Mm-hmm. Not busy at all.
No.
Never a dull moment.
And you're originally from Minnesota, Jacob?
Yeah,
okay.
I grew up in Maple Grove.
Okay, and then this is kind of your territory where you born and raised?
Yeah, Overland Park.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, tell me about the journey to Benedictine for both of you.
You want me to start?
Sure.
So I graduated high school and was looking at both Benedictine and KU. I had danced all the way through grade school and high school, and so that was a huge love of my life. And so looking at where I could continue that, I believe at the time Benedictine had a minor in dance, but that's why I was looking at KU also. And I remember when I went to visit both places, I just prayed that God would show me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just show it all. And my mom, and in her wisdom, was like, I think you should stay the night at both places and just figure out, because then you'll just see it all. It's like, okay. So went nights at both places, and God definitely closed the door at KU. So then going to Benedictine and just met by the hospitality and just the different culture there, I just felt swept up in just the joy and it was just awesome going on campus. I still remember.
So because of proximity, just because of, it's only an hour away, that's how you had heard of it, or?
I had heard of Benedictine through some close family friends, Deacon Dana and Debbie Niermeyer, and they had just put a bug in my ear saying, you should go look there. And at first I was like, Atchison, like this small town, like, thinking I want to go to a bigger and better place than Overland Park, and, a bigger school. But like I said, when I asked God to show me everything, it was very clear that I would find a way to fit in a smaller town than the big craziness that Lawrence was. I think I just felt very small there, even just on that one night campus visit. Anyway, so ended up going to Benedictine and just loved it from the very beginning. It was my sophomore year that I decided,
my sister was there.
Yeah, your sister
Liz.
was already there, Liz. And my sophomore year, I decided to become an RA because I just had such great RAs my freshman year, and it was just an easy thing to choose. And Jake's sister, Liz, ended up being on staff with me there. And I remember walking into her room. We had just moved in, and I saw on the wall she had a picture of her whole family. And so there's 9 of you siblings. Jake's the oldest. Liz is the second oldest.
6 Ravens.
Yeah.
In that whole...
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. So many have gone to Benedictine. But at the time, Liz was the first one that made it down from Minnesota to run there and to do sports. But I remember looking at the picture, and you were still in your cassock with your white collar, and I was like, wow, it's like your brother's gonna be a priest. That's so cool. I just thought it was so awesome. And then showed all your siblings down to little Gabe was probably 6 or 7 at that time. Anyway, so it was just crazy. Like I never knew, like a few years later that you would transfer in and that we would actually meet at Benedictine, but that's kind of how I ended up there.
Did you end up dancing at Benedictine?
I did a little bit. I never officially, I didn't get a minor in it, and I didn't join the drill team, but or the dance team, I guess their official name. But a lot of the girls and the dance team would do choreography projects. Like the girls that were getting a minor in dance had to put on a performance every spring, and they always needed extra bodies. And so
I would
you
just
kind of jump in and help out.
Well, that's fun.
That was fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So that would have been 2008.
2008 is when I showed up.
Was when you showed up. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then Elizabeth kind of leaned into your story a little bit. So what was your road to Benedictine, Jacob?
At the time when you saw that picture, that would have been
2009.
So I was finishing up my time in Rome, I believe. So backstory, oldest of 9, I went to a boarding school in New Hampshire for high school. And that was a tough decision growing up in Minnesota, being from a big family. I was like, family was a big deal for me. And to leave that and go on my own at, very young age, just right out of 8th grade to New Hampshire, of all places. It's kind of similar to Minnesota, still cold.
Sure.
In the winter.
Still north.
Sure.
But it was an all-guys boarding school.
And did mom and dad just want you out of the house? Or why did they ship you off?
Yeah, teenage Jake would tell you I wanted out of the house, right? I was ready to get out of there. No, but it was kind of a mutual decision. They definitely pushed me. They helped me get there. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't have gotten there on my own to make that kind of decision at that age. But it was a 3-year program because we lived there. We only went home in the summers for 2 weeks. We spent Christmas there even.
Oh my gosh.
It was a very intense, very militant, very strict environment, as you can imagine, because it's a bunch of, high school boys running around everywhere.
From all over? Is it international or over there?
It was from all over the States. And there was one guy from Canada, one guy from New Zealand as well. Great environment. I mean, I'm still very close to those guys. We've been in each other's weddings now. There's a handful of priests that are now ordained, and we all still stay in touch. It's been a great experience to have had. That kind of leads into how I joined the seminary, because a lot of those guys were discerning the priesthood. They were discerning, am I called to this? And we graduated technically a year early, right? So my friends back home in Minnesota were starting their senior year, and I'm like, I'm done with this high school thing. Like, what's next? And I told myself, I'm going to give God a year and see where it goes. And so I said, God, here it is. I'm going to Connecticut for a month. I'm going to join the novitiate there, and we'll see where this leads. And I got an assignment, is what they called it in this religious order, to go to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So I was 16, not fluent in Spanish. I knew 2 words of Spanish. Found myself on a plane after some days of spiritual exercises, joining the seminary, joining the novitiate, and ended up in Mexico. I was the only American brother out of 80 some guys down there in my group. And so it was definitely sink or swim, survive.
When you called your parents to tell them this is what you were doing, were they like, good luck? Or
So your family was familiar with the religious order
Yeah,
too,
they were part of Regnum Christi, which is the lay side of things. And so they were very committed. They had started a school back in Minnesota affiliated with this group. And so they were, very committed to this spirituality that I was a part of.
The idea of Mexico, though, for their 16-year-old oldest son, that had to give your mom a little bit of heartburn or something.
Yeah, it honestly hadn't set in until I was, this sounds very naive, but I was on the plane. I had a, black tie on, black pants. I looked like a Mormon, basically. Not that that's bad or anything, but that's just what I looked like.
Yeah.
And there was this very, tailored suit business Mexican guy next to me, and he saw me flipping through this pocket dictionary. I was trying to learn a couple words, and he was like, ¿Qué estás haciendo? And I was like, I don't speak Spanish. And he's like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm a seminarian. I'm going to go study to be a priest down in Mexico. And he's like, you're going to be a priest in Mexico and you don't know Spanish. He's like, tú estás loco.
Crazy.
And I was like,
you're like, yep, I know.
What? I was like, he's like, who's picking you up? I was like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
So that just shows you where I was. And yeah, you could imagine my parents were probably a little nervous. Another funny story too is when I got there, we were allowed to email them, once a week. Kind of, that was just the way the rules were with the communication with family and friends. And so I was sending emails to, Carrie or whatever .com, and her email was actually .net. And so all these emails were getting bounced, and finally, like 2 months in, they got a hold of me, like, oh my gosh, are you okay?
Oh my, so so your mom and dad hadn't heard from you for 2 months.
I mean, I don't know. That's how I remember it. So somehow they broke through. Somehow they got.
On the next episode, we interviewed Jacob's parents.
You really should.
Yeah, that's how I remember it for sure. But I mean, they're busy running their business, their family. I was in Mexico studying, in the seminary, and so yeah, that's how I definitely remember it. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you're fine. Like you're okay," and
you're alive.
But it shows, I think, too, to a degree, that just shows the faith that they had, that they were coming from. They were, offering up their firstborn to the Lord kind of thing. And I had their full support. The high school I graduated from was very, the education was classical, very rigorous, highest SAT scores compared in the country, top 5 for sure. So it was a good experience in that regard too, but the fact that it jettisoned me into this, vocational or career, trying to figure out what God wants of me, I ended up in Mexico. Then I finished up a liberal arts degree in Spain, so I got to go to the other side in Europe and learn that side of the language. To this day, I'm pretty sure I read more books in Spanish than English, but that's not to my credit. That's just the formation I was a part of and the programs they had. And I'm kind of nerdy that way. It was just a passion of mine to read. And so I got to learn the Mexican culture, the Spanish culture, European culture. And the next phase then would have been Rome. So I finished that liberal arts degree. We drove down to Rome, and that was all in Italian. So
oh my gosh.
Try studying philosophy in Italian as an American who's only spoken Spanish for the last 5 years in a community that also only speaks Spanish.
And how old are you at this point?
So that would have been, I was probably 20 at that point.
Oh my gosh.
21.
Wow. So 4 years?
Yeah.
So 2 years in each place.
Yeah, it was 2 years in Mexico, 2 years in Spain, 2 years in Rome. And in Rome was what I would call kind of, that's when I really, came to grips with, okay, God, what are you calling me to, right? It was the year of St. Paul. And God, we know, called St. Paul, right? He got knocked off his horse, supposedly. That's not in the Bible, but that's how we all picture it. Mm-hmm. Big light, got knocked off his horse and changed his life around, And I got to visit all these places that he had been in Rome. The Pauline year had all the papal audiences were about St. Paul. I read his letters multiple times, and I was really into this. And he's an intense guy. Mm-hmm. He was a champion of the faith, and I said, what are you calling me to? You called Paul to this. What are you calling me to? And then the next year was the year of the priesthood, and they had the largest concelebrated mass in the history of the world. All these priests descended on Rome, and I remember that very clearly because I was the head sacristan that year too.
Holy cow, yeah.
For a seminary with 400 brothers and a couple hundred priests, and so imagine the amount of work to keep that machine oiled. So I was really into liturgy, into the priesthood. I got permission to pray the breviary or liturgy of the hours. And for some reason, with the help of my spiritual director, it was like, I'm not called to this, right? You can't just make that part up, right? I loved the studies. I loved the community. I loved the sports. I loved the language. I loved the food. Like, you could go on and on and on about the things I was enjoying in life. But if you're not called to the priesthood, it goes together, right?
Right.
And so with their help, I decided, okay, I'm not just gonna jump out of this. I'm gonna continue to discern, well, if it's not the priesthood, what? And so I got to go on an internship, is what they called it, back to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And that was just to, kind of dabble in ministry, dabble in what it would be like to be a priest, what it would be like to lead that kind of ministry side of things. So I actually went back to the novitiate where I started as an assistant superior and was helping other young men just coming in, discerning the religious life, as I'm also,
as you're discerning,
figuring it out on a parallel path. So long story short, that's how I ended up back in Mexico for another year and a half or so. And by December of 2011, I believe that would have been, it was pretty clear, hey, this has been great. I'm putting it all in God's hands, just like I did back in high school. I gave him a year. It turned into 8 beautiful years of my life. Got to go on spiritual exercises, which is, 8 days of total silence up in the mountains, and just surrendered it all to him again. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, I fly home, spend Christmas for the first time in 11 years with my family. And my dad and I are talking, and he's like, what's next? There's no place for you here. I'm going to live with my brother.
Yeah.
They've got life going on. It's kind of, out of the blue for them in a way.
Yeah.
And so my sister Liz had a great experience at Benedictine, and he was like, look, we were finding jobs. There was a warehouse manager job. The only requirement was you have to be fluent in Spanish.
You're like,
I got that down. You'd have to beat it out of me at this point. And so he's like, yeah, you could go earn $70 a year, or you could, kind of find your place. And he's like, I'm not telling you what to do, but Benedictine was a great place. He's like, I'm completely convinced of the mission that Benedictine has in this world. And your sister she just graduated. She had a great experience. Maybe we go check it out. So we got in the car and drove down, and somehow, I don't know, maybe he talked to President Minnis, but it was mid-year, right? And so
January, yeah.
Yeah, it was January, and I had, a little suitcase of my things in case I stayed. And
oh my gosh.
We were just checking it out, like, is this where I'm supposed to be?
And it was. So you never left? I'm sorry. When you drove down, your dad was like, well, see you later. You stayed.
Well, we drove down together.
And then you had
we scoped out that there was obviously, we had kind of made arrangements like, hey, is there room for me to transfer in?
Yeah.
They said, yeah, we'd work with you. I had a bunch of international studies and credits under my belt, but I was like, what am I going to do with the liberal arts and philosophy degrees? Like that, there's really nothing there in my mind. And so, yeah, a funny story, when we first got to campus, I was like, oh, residential campus, kind of like what I've been doing for the last 11 years, living in community.
Right. You're like, let me tell you about community, Benedictine College.
So in that sense, maybe I'm not the rebel, but I was the non-traditional student. I was coming in at 23, 24 years old, got to live off campus right away my first semester. And God knew where to place me. I mean, I found the right house. I had they were all in their senior year. We had a philosophy major, political science major, criminology major, education. Kenny was in education. And so those guys were just a great group to kind of transition back into society.
Almost like, yeah.
I mean, it was like coming back from being deployed, right?
Sure.
Almost like the PTSD of that, and now coming into just regular civilian life. They joked I'd be playing music sometimes, and there'd be this 10-year gap of
what you were listening
to. the 90s music just blaring, and then some Italian or some Spanish, and then the modern stuff, and they're like, dude, where were you? There's this black hole.
What happened to you? Oh my gosh.
You were still under vows when you came too, though. I mean, it took a while for all of that.
Yeah, it took a while for Rome to get back, but I mean.
What do you mean by that?
So I had taken, as part of the religious life, I had taken temporal vows.
Okay.
So as part of the novitiate, after those 2 years in Mexico, I took my first round of temporary vows, which is 3 years of committing to poverty, chastity, obedience as a religious.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Rome, I renewed those. So the church allows you 3 rounds of renewals before it's like, okay, are you completely all in committed to this and it's perpetual?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, do you move on? And so the religious order I was a part of, there was religious brothers, and eventually they all became priests as well.
Okay.
And so the priesthood is what I was ultimately discerning, right? I loved the religious life. The religious life was great. And in fact, I looked into, there's a consecrated branch of male consecrated. And, I had gone through everything. I visited the diocese in Minneapolis. I think that was right before I went on my internship to Mexico. So anyway, I explored multiple. I was pretty thorough.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So you're at Benedictine now, and it's 2011? Which is
it was going, it would have been January of 12. Yeah.
Okay, and you're graduating in 12.
Yeah, it was like the tail end of my Benedictine experience. Yeah.
So maybe let's talk about how did your journey end up crossing paths?
Yeah, and
at the cafeteria, or
well, this is when we sat down. We were like, what are we going to say on a podcast about the greatness of Benedictine, right? Like,
we have a lot to say.
Yeah,
but like,
all we have to bring to the table is our story, our love story, and at the end of the day, I think that's it, right?
Which is all that it has to be.
I was on this crazy, journey, and you too. I mean, you have an interesting story as well.
But Greg, a mutual friend, lived in the house that he ended up in. And so we kind of got to know each other a little bit through that. But it wasn't until that summer that we really kind of got to know each other more. But just to kind of give a little bit of, I guess, my story.
Yeah.
I think going into college, I always loved the idea of like getting married and having a family, just because my family was such a great experience too. I feel like I was so blessed with my parents and the example that they had. So I always wanted that. But as like the tail end of my high school, I would drive up to Lawrence, to the St. Lawrence Center, and Mike Scherschlich would give talks to the college students there. And my parents, for some reason, thought that it would be a good idea for me to go to some of those as well. So they threw me in a car with some family friends, and we would go up there every Sunday night. And I feel like that really just started opening me more to just the beauty of our faith and just how real and relevant it was. And so then going into Benedictine, meeting some religious sisters, and I had an openness to that. Like, I feel like God really opened my heart to just explore that too. The idea of giving myself totally to him in a marriage, but to God, instead of to a man. And I feel like at Benedictine, it's the cool thing to do, to discern your vocation, at least when I was there, at least with the friends that I had. 2 of my really closest friends ended up entering the convent.
Oh, wow.
Right when we graduated. So they're still in the Servidora order. So I looked into them a little bit too, but I'd say, I was very open throughout my college time. I would, if somebody would ask me on a date, I would go. Like, I tried to have like a balanced approach to discernment, because I felt like if I closed off my heart to one or the other, and like I wouldn't be open to what God wanted for me.
Sure.
So by the time Jake ended up at Benedictine, I had explored different dating relationships and, gotten to know a lot of great guys that way. Also, there was like 3 or 4 religious orders that had kind of come through Benedictine, or I was exposed to at my time there, that I had either gone on come and sees with, or at least gone and visited. One order in particular, my senior year, the Apostles of the Interior Life, they were in the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas. Even though they're an Italian order, Archbishop Naumann had brought them here to as they were getting started. So I got to know some of those sisters just back at home, and they had invited me on a pilgrimage and a come and see that the summer after I graduated. So we had just barely met right before that, but I was still going, and I was like, well, I'm going to see what this is like, kind of like how you do.
I knew you as Greg's friend, and I thought maybe you were like a focus missionary.
Yeah.
She'd come around once in a while and
we
said hi. Yeah.
Yeah. And Greg was just a child a friend from childhood, his mom and my mom went to nursing school together at Rutgers, and so we just had family history. So it was just kind of, he's like a brother, you know. So he was like, you gotta meet this guy Jake. Like, he just dropped out of nowhere. He's so cool though. Like, Anyways, so when what was that? The summer of my senior year. No, I had just graduated, technically. 2012.
And what was your degree?
My degree was in theology, and then secondary education and elementary education.
Okay. So the goal in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to be a nun or be a teacher?
Yeah, or be a teacher. I think the idea was I wanted to be a high school theology teacher. Yeah, or both. I know. Yeah, I was open to whatever. Like, okay, God, like, what do you want? The theology degree, I loved the classes that I was taking at Benedictine, and there was just so many amazing teachers. Yeah. And I was like, well, gosh, like, I'm here. Like, I got to get bang for my buck. You know, like, if I can leave with 3 degrees, like, in the same amount of time that it takes me to get 1, like, let's just get it done. And so at that time, I wanted to be a high school theology teacher back at St. James Academy. Was, like, the dream, because it had opened my sophomore year of high school, so I never got to go there. Oh, okay. But all my siblings did, and the culture there is so similar to the culture at Benedictine. Yeah. And Camp Tecumseh is where I had worked one summer. Anyways, it was just like, in my world, it seemed like all the same. It made sense, yeah. So the elementary education was kind of an add-on, because you can't get certified as a secondary teacher in the state of Kansas with a theology degree, because it's not one of the it's not a subject. Core, it's not, like, it's not on standardized testing. So I had to get the elementary education to, like, qualify at all, which is funny because I actually ended up teaching elementary education for the little bit that I was. God works in mysterious ways, right?
So you go that summer, you go on this come and see, and so you didn't see anything, so you came back to
kind of, but that trip was very instrumental, like, in my vocational discernment, because kind of like you, except just on a very condensed, I mean, I wasn't gone for 8 years. You know, I met you and was like, man, I'm so unaccomplished. Like, what have I done for the last 8 years of my life? Like, I've been to Missouri and Colorado. Like, that's great. But no, so I was in Italy with the sisters, and I got to go up with the community to, like, this beautiful spot in Cortina. Like, it's in the Swiss Alps, you know what I mean? Like, just this amazing environment to go on a come and see. And I remember we had just had a talk by one of the sisters about how God is a God of details, and how, you know, often we don't ask for something specific because we think that we'll get let down or we'll be disappointed. And, you know, on some level, that's like a lack of faith and, like, a lack of trust to not, like, if you want the red one, like, ask God for the red one, and, like, trust that he's going to answer the prayer in the way that he sees best fit, but, like, be bold and ask for that. Right. So I remember it was this tiny little chapel, you know, looking over the Dolomite Mountains. I'm just, like, sitting there. There's 2 pews and then the tabernacle. So it's just me and God. And I had been having, like, such an amazing time that trip, but kind of like Jake had said, like, it was so awesome, but I didn't have this piece of, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I was, like, just waiting for that deep sense of, like, even though this is going to be hard, or I'm scared or nervous, I still have this, like, I'm supposed to do it. And I never had that feeling, even though I was having such a great time. So I'm sitting there just, you know, in prayer time, and kind of got a little snarky with God, because I'm like, well, gosh, like, okay, if you're a God of the details, like, what do you want? You know, like, I'm trying to give myself to you. Like, there's been 3 or 4 different orders I've visited. Like, I've never felt this peace. Like, why wouldn't you want me to be a sister? Like, isn't that the best thing? You know, like, if we're looking at it's not, you know, but it's like, in that moment, I was like, isn't this like the holier thing to do? Like, isn't this how I'm going to get to heaven? And I just had this sense that he wasn't calling me to that. And so just thinking back on my last 4 years, I was just like, gosh, I'm so done looking. Like, I'm so, like, decision fatigue and just exhausted of, like, trying to find the right person or the right thing, or, like, what do you want from me? And so I was like, if you're really a God of details, like, I will know if it's the right man that you bring to my life, if he's from a large family, and if he's been in the seminary before. Like, that's my 2 criteria. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care, you know, I mean, obviously I want to be attracted to him, but, like, you take care of the details, but, like, that's how I'll know it's the right person to at least, like, get to know. So then we come back home and get to know you a little bit better, and it finally comes out.
Sorry, real fast. No, so you came back, and he was at Benedictine, and you're in Kansas City. Right.
So we had kind of met just a few times through him living at Greg's house on campus, but then that summer I was technically graduated, but I still had 1 extra semester of student teaching. But I did that in Kansas City, and I was able to live at home. So in my mind, I still wasn't at Benedictine, even though I was. And so it was really that summer, like in between, that we met each other, like officially.
Yeah,
and, like, started getting to know each other.
Our mutual friend, he had kind of a little graduation get together down. They lived in Kansas City proper, and so we were in the city, and he had a bunch of friends over, and they're kind of a, you know, like almost like an Italian family.
Oh, they are Italian.
They're very Italian. Just, you know, everyone's. So we were cooking dinner, and they tell us, you know, they played matchmaker, kind of like, hey, go out there and, you know, cook the chicken with Emily.
Yeah. And did you know that he had been in seminary? Like when Greg said he dropped out of nowhere, it wasn't the sky, but you didn't know it was the seminary.
Not really. And even though I knew your sister Liz, like that sophomore year, I mean, maybe we talked about it, but it wasn't ever, that's not why I like sought you out to like, get to know you. Yeah. So once we started hanging out a little bit more, you know, talking, it came out like I'm the oldest of 9, and I was in the seminary for 11 years, and I'm just like, darn it. Like, it's so obvious, like, and clear in front of me, but like now I have to like actually say yes when you ask me out on a date. But I mean,
so when did you tell him that story?
You didn't.
You held it from me. You didn't. The way I remember it is you never even told me that until we were engaged.
Yeah, because I just didn't want to. I don't know. And
it made it that much more powerful.
Oh, sure.
In my mind.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not like she was keeping it from me, but she was like, hey, by the way.
This is how I knew that God was probably working.
Because we got engaged May of 2013.
Yeah. So, I mean, we dated about 10 months and then got engaged. We're engaged for a year. But it was one of those things that, you know, you had discerned so much and so heavily, and you know, you were going this direction. And I feel like I had discerned a lot too in my own way, at least just interiorly. You know, I had done a lot of work in my heart of like what God was wanting and what. So we were both pretty certain of like what God wanted for us. It was just kind of waiting for the right opportunity to present itself. So I think once we got to know each other, and when you know,
right,
when it's rooted in Christ, you know, and so it was kind of one of those things where like, okay, well, let's just jump in.
Well, and you had you know, I think it's pretty amazing that you both had the patience and the fortitude to just be like, okay, I'm getting a little frustrated here. Cause, you know, like, so, hello, you know, like, because that's real.
Right.
You know, we're not just all Pollyanna, like whatever, whenever we're just going to sit here and, you know, be holier than thou, although we strive for that. You know, I think that's when you almost, not that you hit rock bottom, but when you get to that point and it's like, all right, okay, I'm a little confused. Help me out. You know, and you ask in that rawness. Yeah. It's just beautiful how it comes to light then. And like, I love that God is in the details. It's so true. And I think you guys are a living proof of that. It's
and you're
amazing.
Never going to be disappointed or let down or have regrets, like giving it to him, right? Giving it to God. Like, you know, if you look at my trajectory from the outside and say, well, that was a waste of time and energy, and you could have built a corporation, or you could have done this, or you could have done that. And it's like, no, I was building the kingdom. I was building the heart that's ready to marry this beautiful woman and raise a family in this crazy world, you know. Right.
Because you're a better husband and father because of that.
For sure. I believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I said I need someone from the seminary, you know, it's not to say that men that don't discern the priesthood aren't worth dating, but I think in my mind that was just like an easy way of like, well, they have to at least be a little bit formed that way, you know, or like have been exposed to.
Right. Or do you think you were like, okay, I'm going to like push this. Like, this is going to be a hard one for him to make happen.
Yes. To push the limits a little bit.
Let's see what you can do here, God.
And it's a gamble, you know, wanting someone from a big family too, because sometimes they get out and they're like, that was crazy. I don't want a big family, you know, but hoping that you had a heart for family life and kids, and which you totally do. So God knows.
So life after college, you guys have been out for a while. Like, how have you, I mean, you guys have such a robust formation, childhood, teenage years in Benedictine. How have you taken, I mean, there's a lot. So maybe one or two things that you've really taken out into your professional world and as you raise your family and just, you know, all of the experience you had Benedictine and likewise to really continue that trajectory, because it's really such a beautiful, and you're so young. So, I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, I think like our house has always had an open door, right? The kind of the typical Benedictine hospitality. Being the oldest and having siblings going through Benedictine, well, we were kind of a second home base for my whole family, still living in Minnesota, some of the kids still going to school here. So we were always hosting, my sister and her friends, or my brother and his friends. And I think we're both givers in that sense, that we find a lot of joy in that kind of hospitality and just hanging out and just sharing, just being together, having a good time. So that's one thing I think we both really live by and stand by is we love having people over and just sharing that time together. That's important.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes it's easy to sit back and be like, what are we doing with our time? And just to further the kingdom and like specifically for God. But lately it's just really been on both of our hearts that like we are just pouring so much like into our family life right now.
Absolutely.
Because I think you turned out the way that you are because of your family life. And like I feel like I turned out the way I did because of my family life. And in this day and age, it's just so easy to just outsource everything or just get swept up in the busyness and the rat race of life and kind of forego some of those family traditions and family routines. And I just feel like our formation, at least my formation at Benedictine College, I felt so poured into like in an intentional way, like, through the staff and through just other friends and peers and even just other families that were still stuck around in town, that were still associated with the college somehow. And just really trying to do that for our children, like as they grow from a young age. It's the hard and holy work, that doesn't get any recognition very much. But
it's what matters, and I think it's what really makes it worth it.
Right.
And you see the fruits of it, not only for yourselves, what you've experienced, but I always think of that with my childhood too. My mom was always like, "We'll have it at our house. We'll have it at our house." Whether it was a friend gathering or family gathering, and there's just such beauty in that. And it wasn't easy, to always have an open door. But then you look at Benedictine and it's the same thing. And you see how fruitful and how much the college is continuing to grow because of that foundation and formation of hospitality and everyone's welcome. And when you do that, your heart just grows. And that's when you are, building the kingdom. Right.
I have a funny story from I think it was my first semester. Like I said, I got into a really good group of friends, and this shows too how you can have a good time and still be very rooted in.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we were at a friend's house. We were playing some game that kind of got out of hand. We were all kind of like, every round of this game, eventually we were just like, we need to take a break. It was one of those like, it wasn't Cards Against Humanity, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
And it just got inappropriate, right? We were just like, we're done. And so we're all taking a breather, and there might have been a drink or two in there, and a friend, it's late. He was like, "All right, guys, we've had such a fun time, and we're just laughing our eyeballs out. Like, we need to have a serious conversation." And we were like, "Oh, what's going on?" We're all in this kitchen, and people are still like crying from how much we were laughing, and our sides hurt. And he was like, "If you could describe your spiritual journey as a natural phenomenon in nature, what would it be?"
Whoa.
And we're all just
11 o'clock at night. Like, I can't even think straight.
You're like, "Let me have another beer and then we'll talk about it."
But, and maybe that's just dumb college kids being college kids. But I still think about that 10, 11 years later, because that, to me, that wraps it up in a nutshell, right? You can still have a great, fun time with everybody and just enjoy yourself. And you can still be serious. And I remember what some guys were saying. Well, I'm a waterfall, or
That's hilarious.
The moon reflecting the light. I'm not the light, but I'm reflecting it. Stuff like that. I mean, it was getting really deep. And I was like, man, these are my friends. These guys are awesome.
And I think what's so cool, and it's kind of counterintuitive of what our society puts out there now. It gets to more of a deep, whatever environment you're in, as far as like if you're playing a card game or whatever, but there's substance to the environment you're in. It's not just living in the shallow end. And I think that's why Benedictine is what it is for so many of us.
Yeah.
You know?
And I couldn't remember the jokes that were popping up or the inappropriate things or whatever that just got out of hand. I couldn't tell you that.
Right.
But I can still tell you about that conversation we had, about the wholesome side of it.
Well, and how it makes you feel. You know what I mean? Because you see a little bit of somebody's heart. You see a little bit of the extra. And that's when you know that you've got more than just, a handshake friendship kind of thing. Yeah. So... Yeah. Jake and Emily, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. You two are just so beautiful, and I love that you're part of the Raven family, and maybe your kiddos will be someday too.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Always a Raven. New episodes will drop every Tuesday, and you're not going to want to miss any of them because we've got some pretty amazing guests coming up. They are reigniting the hearts of Ravens throughout all generations across all industries, and they are incredible. Be sure to like and follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any episodes. And if you're a new Raven or a potential Raven, be sure to check out our website at benedictine.edu. And remember, once a Raven, always a Raven.